It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew our version 1.0 decklist to the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the model, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The decklist is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider doing all that YouTube stuff. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're continuing our way through Pre-Con Week, and today we're talking about the leader of the Jeskai deck, Shiko and Narset Unified. A 4-mana 4/4 human spirit dragon with flying and vigilance that has the new flurry mechanic. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, we get to copy that spell if it targets a permanent or player, and you can choose new targets for the copy. But if we don't copy a spell this way, we get to draw a card. This is really interesting because I think it's incentivizing us to play targeting spells. If we don't, we still get to draw, and of course we're in Jeskai, and a color combination that likes to cast spells for many reasons. So there's a lot of ways we can pay this off. Shiko doesn't pack in prowess like Elsha, the alternate commander of the deck, does, but there's some ways we can take advantage of prowess in the deck. We can try to get key spells to copy for her flurry ability to get more value off of. And then we also can just look at casting cheap spells to make sure we have that flurry cost right every turn, making sure even if it's not copying us a spell, it's drawing us a card as we turn through our deck. And then what I think one of the biggest things that the deck's shown us, especially with the new card we'll talk about, is our ability to get spells back out of our graveyard, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. But I think when you're talking about, I want to say a quick thank you to the members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our video earlies for just $1 a month, consider checking out becoming a member down below. But I think in any good Spells Matters deck, one of the most important things we can play is cards that care about us casting spells. Archmage Emeritus is probably a great example of what we want to do here. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we get to draw a card, again, refilling our hand, getting us value. The new Caldera Pyramaw is pretty fun. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a counter on it, and it deals damage equal to its power to target opponent, splashing out some damage right as we go. Lear is going to make sure our spells can't be countered, and it's also going to let us play spells back out of our graveyard so they have flashback. I threw it here just because I think the can't be countered matters, right? Making sure that we can play our things we know they're going to go through for big damage, or what else we have. We need them for our opponents. Manaform Hellkite says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get an XX dragon token, where X is that spell's mana value, and we lose it at the end of turn. This is just nice to get some extra things that can attack their end of the turn. Maybe try to get in some extra damage to our opponents, and make sure that every spell we cast matters more than just what it is that's printed on the spell. Monastery Mentor, one of those classic Jeskai creatures. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we make a monk with prowess. It has prowess 2, just going to help make up this army that's going to hopefully get bigger right every turn and become a threat to our opponents as we cast multiple spells on the turn, even maybe 3 or 4 right on those later turns. Stormkill Artist gets us a treasure whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, which is really nice, mainly because then we can use those treasures right on future turns to either get bigger spells or more spells in a turn. And Stormkill gets a little buff for each artifact we control. Taigam from the new set seems really great, has that flurry ability. It says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it, then exile the spell you cast with 4 time counters on it. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. What this is going to do is take the original spell you actually cast and put it into suspend. You get the copy, so you still get to use the spell. And the really fun part here, Shiko and Narset will still copy that if you can, so you'll still get kind of 2 copies of it, right? But the original one will go into suspend, and then as it comes off suspend, you get to cast it for free, and it's going to be really great. Varen, another one of our great Magecraft triggers. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1/+1 to let it turn, but the key line of text is the bottom one. If casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, it goes off additional time. This is going to work for Shiko and Narset. Should allow us to copy that spell twice. And there's a ton of other things in our deck, right, that care about spells being cast. It is only an instant or sorcery spell, though. So Magecraft, of course, is going to go off twice no matter what. But we need to make sure that it only triggers, right? It's only going to trigger on us casting instant or sorceries, right? So if we cast an artifact, although it will trigger prowess, Varen isn't going to double that one. And then Voracious Bibliophile, another new blue dragon. Whenever we cast a spell with one or more targets, we draw that many cards. This is a really nice ability, especially if you think about single target removal. We have board wipes in our deck that target specific creatures, things like Curse of the Swine. That's the kind of stuff that's really nice with Bibliophile, because you know you can still draw cards for doing what we want to do. Adaptive Training Post and Twinning Staff are both ways we can continue to copy spells more times. Adaptive Training Post says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, if it has fewer than 3 charge counters on it, we put a charge counter on it, and then we can remove 3 charge counters from it to give the next spell we cast the ability to be copied and choose a new target for the copy. That's really nice, right? Because then we can get just extra copies on these spells as we cast them. And it doesn't take very long for 1 or 2 extra copies of a spell to really mean something over the grand course of a game. Twinning Staff says if we would copy a spell 1 or more times, we copy that many times plus 1. Pretty nice, right? Allowing us just to get more and more copies. Aligned Heart's one of the new enchantments I really like. Whenever we cast our second spell, each turn, so that flurry mechanic, put a rally on it and make a monk for each rally counter on it. So over the course of the game, we're going to make more and more of these monks with prowess, making sure that they can become our army on a future turn. I think prowess matters. Our deck is not built to be just prowess, but I think prowess is one of those abilities that may throw our opponents off, especially as we're casting spells. We see this in a couple different ways. Things like Bria and Elsha both have actual prowess whenever you cast an non-creature spell, +1/+1 until end of turn. Bria actually hands it out to all the rest of our creatures as well. Remember, prowess is a spell you can have. Prowess is an ability you can have multiple instances of, so that is really nice. And then Bria gives a creature able to be unblockable. What I like about Elsha, and we'll cover Elsha on its own in a future video, is that it makes monks equal to the combat damage it deals to a player, and it has trample. A great idea in its own right, and we'll talk about that one later. But I like Balmor because it's only going to trigger on instants and sorceries, but it gives +1/+0 and trample to all of our creatures. And this is really nice because then, right, each of our 2/2s and 3/3s has a chance to still get in for damage, even if our opponent blocks it with a 1/1, right? And I think that's important with prowess, is that we try to find a way to turn that prowess into damage. Jeskai Ascendancy gives all of our creatures effectively prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures we control get +1/+1 on the turn, but it also untaps them, which is nice if we have to tap them for any abilities, and allows us to draw and then discard whenever we cast a non-creature spell if we want to. And then Narset, by herself from Aftermath, a commander again we'll cover a little bit later on the channel when we get to our Jeskai week, gives all of our creatures prowess, and then whenever she attacks, we can actually cast a spell out of any graveyard with mana value less than her power, which is really nice and can come in real handy when it comes to recast certain spells out of the graveyard. But all right, what are some spells we're looking to copy? Well, there's a lot of ways you can interpret this. My first thought was things like big damage spells like Crackle with Power and Jaya's Animating Inferno. The later in the game it gets, the better they are. You get to copy them, meaning that they can really just deal double the damage and hopefully start really putting damage on the board. Arenicus's Foul Duplication can copy Shiko and Narset or really any other creature we have. The copy has flying and isn't legendary, which is nice, but it allows it to stick around. And feels like a really fun thing to get copied, because if you are targeting Shiko and Narset with it, you could end up with 3 copies of Shiko and Narset, just gaining more copying of spells. Jeska's Will is a spell we can actually copy because the first ability actually targets an opponent. So we can actually make sure we could get double the effects of Jeska's Will, including that exiling a top of your cards or a library, right, extending our hand for the turn and getting more value. When I put Mana Geyser on here, I forgot it didn't target, but I think it's still a great spell to get us a ton of mana. And we can still copy it with our other abilities. Electro Dominance deals X to any target, and we can cast a spell in our hand with mana value X or less without paying its mana cost. This is a really nice ability because not only does it deal out damage, but it allows us to cast other spells that turn, getting more prowess, getting more spells, triggers to go off depending on what we have on our board, and just adding overall more value for us. Galvanic Iteration may not copy, or may not target, but it's a spell that just copies the next spell we cast, and that is a nice first spell, potentially, depending on what we're going to cast next. Jeskai Charm, on the first 2 modes, can target, putting a creature on top of its owner's library, or dealing 4 damage to an opponent or planeswalker, or it can be a nice buff for us, giving all of our creatures +1/+1 and lifelink. I like the charms, they're very good modal spells that give you lots of options. Same thing with Sublime Epiphany. The difference between Jeskai Charm and Sublime Epiphany is Charm we can only choose 1, Sublime Epiphany, we can choose as many of them as we want, and a lot of them target, right? Counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, make a token that's a copy of target creature you control, target player draws a card. Because every mode targets, it means we can copy it. Now, because Flurry is going to be easier to activate on our turn, Sublime's a little tough, right? Because the top two are really going to happen more probably on our opponent's turns more than our turn. But what I really like about Sublime Epiphany is those bottom three abilities are actually kind of well worth the 6 mana if those are the 3 we can pick. And getting it twice makes it well worth the 6 mana, right? 2 cards, 2 tokens that are copies of creatures we control, and 2 non-land permanents bounced, I think is well worth 6 mana. And it's going to lead to some fun scenarios if it can be. But I think we always want to start our turn with a cheap spell if possible. And there's a lot of options here. You have things like Faithless Looting, Ponder, and Preordain. All of these are draw spells that also lets us dig a little bit more and just have us access to having at least one spell with only 1 mana into it. Pongify is an example of a removal spell. It's just 1 mana. Serum Visions is another draw card. And we are playing things like Seize the Spoils, a draw spell that costs 3 mana but gives you a treasure back, so you're still only using 2 mana to do it. But the point is, you have these fairly cheap spells that do great effects, and they're only 1, 2, or 3 mana, where hopefully you have enough mana in your turn to still play another spell and get to that flurry. But I think where our deck can really excel is taking a turn and playing some spells we've already played again. We have the options of that in the old Past in Flames and the new Will of the Jeskai. Both of them allow us to give each instant and sorcery card in our graveyard flashback until end of turn, so being able to play it back, which is really nice because then we can get those key spells back again and cast a bunch of them. One of my personal favorites for doing this is Arcane Bombardment. This is enchantment. This is whenever we cast our first instant or sorcery each turn, we get to exile an instant or sorcery at random from our graveyard, and then copy each card exiled with Bombardment, and we can cast those copies without paying their mana cost. Basically, once per turn, when you cast that first spell, you get an exile, you get a spell from your graveyard. I normally just put it underneath Bombardment. That's how you know what's been exiled with it, and you get to cast any number of them that have been exiled with it for free. Now, you don't have to cast them, but you can, and it's huge because you're casting them for free, meaning you're triggering all your cast abilities, and you're getting all of those spells again, and you're just creating this nice crescendo of spell value underneath an Arcane Bombardment as long as it sticks around. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Shiko and Narset. And although it's not a commander I think I love in the Jeskai spell space, I think there's a lot of other options. I think it's always worth looking at these commanders because I think we can learn a lot. And as we go into testing, I think I'd want to know probably how much my deck really cares about copying spells. If I had to say, I think that's where Shiko and Narset really wants to go, is copying more spells. So I tried to throw options of hero cards I would think that would help me do that. Things like Alania, which lets you let an opponent draw a card to copy the first instant, sorcery, and otter spell you cast each turn. Of course, we don't have a ton of otters in the deck, but instant sorcery, allowing you to copy both of them once per turn, is a huge ability and can really get out of hand. Stealily, of course, is a very popular commander in the Izzet spell space. It can be a combo with plenty of things, but I think it's really nice because once you hit that third spell that you've cast, you can start tapping stealthily to copy a spell at the right time, really getting value from it. My thought on something like Full Throttle is if we wanted to go more into prowess into this deck, Full Throttle would give us multiple combats to really take advantage of the prowess that we have. But the truth is, I think if you really want prowess out of this deck, you're better off going into Elsha, which we'll cover later on the channel. But let's do what we love to do best on this channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of our playtest is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to determine our best plays, but it's just to get ourselves into a game scenario, looking at our deck, how do we set up our boards, and what do we value in our opening hands. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with Felwar Stone for some artifact ramp. We've got a Faithless Looting, that adaptive training post, and Storm Kilns. We've got a good, decent mix, right? We don't necessarily need to Faithless Looting turn 1. I kind of like the idea of just getting my board set up. Now, here's the really fun part. I have all of my colors right here, which means I can cast Shiko and Narset no matter what. Now, right, we can start flurrying. And what I think is really important about flurry in this deck is that, remember, Shiko and Narset doesn't have to copy the thing we cast. We can still get the card draw. And I think that's important sometimes because there's going to be turns where you go, well, why would I want to do this or why would I want to do that? And the truth is sometimes it's just really worth it to get the cast, right? Here, my thought is something like the adaptive training post just to get it started. And I'm looking at 2 mana left. We don't want to do the iteration because that isn't going to have anything to copy. I like the idea of the looting. Let's just draw 2 pitch tune. It's not going to get copied, but it is going to let us draw a card, and it's going to put a counter on the adaptive training post. So Shiko's going to go off first, drawing us a card, putting us a counter on that. Then the Faithless Looting is going to go off, letting us draw 2, and now we pitch 2. I like that we get to draw the extra card because it may end up changing what we choose to pitch. Here we see Jeskai Ascendancy, again, a way to kind of draw and discard when we cast things. Narset's Reversal is a powerful spell that lets us actually bounce a spell back to our opponent's hand and then copy it, and we get to choose targets for the copy, which is a really nice ability. We have a lot here and a lot we can do with. We still don't have the mana for that Epiphany next. We would need that, right, for out of this mountain. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. Galvanic Iteration, we could still cast from our graveyard, right? It could be something we could still get back. And as for my other choice, like I really like the Ascendancy because it could draw us cards, but at the same time, I think it makes sense to try to get Stormkill Artist down to start netting some mana out of that. I'm not really sure. I like the reversal. I like the removal. I like the Epiphany. I like the Ascendancy. So just for the purpose of this one, we'll pitch the Ascendancy. But the truth is, I like all of them, and sometimes it's really hard to choose. Here, I think this turn is a nice turn for just setting up, playing Stormkill plus Balmor, drawing a card off the flurry, just setting our hand up and getting some more creatures on the value that are on the board that are going to turn out. We could have attacked with Shiko. I forget it has flying and vigilance. I'll be honest, I get so focused on the spells sometimes that I forget they can attack. But I don't mind this as a turn because the Twinning Staff's really nice. We can actually play this Twinning Staff before another spell, potentially. And now we're getting a little bit of a buff with Balmor when we cast our instant sorcery. Stormkill Artist is going to give us some mana when we do it. I think we just better set up the board. And man, Arcane Signet is a really nice, Arcane Bombardment's a really nice draw. Right now we have 2 spells in our graveyard. Note that Galvanic Iteration says when you next cast one this turn. So with Arcane Bombardment, you actually get to pick the order you cast the spells in, meaning iteration could be really nice. I think in an ideal world, we go Twinning Staff plus like something like Reality Shift just to remove something. Get a counter, could remove 2 things, right? Because it targets, and we actually get a 3rd copy. We get a 2nd copy because of the Twinning Staff, meaning we'd remove 3 things, which is huge for 2 mana. Stormkill Artist, right, makes us a treasure. And it actually makes us 2 more treasures because we copied it twice, right? Balmor gives them +1/+0 and trample. And then we just remove 3 creatures for 2 mana, right? And I think we're in great shape because now we have the mana to keep up, Narset's Reversal. But hopefully next turn we can play the Arcane Bombardment in maybe some other spell if we can draw into something, right, worth it. But I like that we kind of have this mana now. Now, Shiko can attack in there with Trample that turn. As we go one more turn, we see a land, which is kind of unfortunate because we don't actually have anything to reversal, right? Which is what we kind of want to do. Let me think about this. If I play a Sublime Epiphany, I have 10 mana. I could flash back the Galvanic Iteration, right? This would put a counter on the trading post. Whenever I cast my next spell, copy it, you choose new targets for the copy. Then my thought is remove all the counters from trading post. So now I've got 2 copies the next time I cast something. Cast the Epiphany, right? This is my second spell. So I already have 2 copies, 1 from the iteration and 1 from the trading post. I'm getting 1 from Shiko and 1 from Twinning Staff. So I now basically have 5 copies of Sublime Epiphany. That's 5 more treasures. Balmor goes off once just from me casting that spell. But Balmor has actually gone off twice this turn because of because of me casting the Evacuation, I get to draw 5, return 5 non-land permanents in his hand, and make 5 tokens of a copy of a creature I control. And I feel like Stormkiln Artist feels like a good one there, right? So think about this. I'm drawing 5, making 5 copies of the Stormkiln, and then bounce 5 permanents. And now we're just in great shape, right? We've got and anything except a board wipe can keep us down, right? A board wipe's really the big thing at this point. And I think we're just in good shape. It's good to see some of these ones where you can see your start seeing your mid to late game choices. But let's get into playtest number 2. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Whirlwind of Thought, a great way to start drawing cards whenever we cast non-creature spells, Arcane Signet, and Seize the Spoils. We have some draw, we have some ramp. I like it. We got some great ways to start getting ourselves up towards the things we want. I guess Arcane Signet could have made more sense that turn. So here's my thought here. I could play Shiko, and if I do that, next turn I could play both Felwar and Arcane Signet and basically draw a card out of it if I want to. Or I can take this turn to just go Arcane Signet into Felwar Stone and set up for next turn, right? I think there's a lot of interesting options. I kind of like the idea of the Shiko. Let's see how that route goes for us. Because now we come into this turn, ooh, Twinning Staff feels good too, right? We've got 5 mana. We could go Arcane Signet, Twinning Staff, or we just draw off of Shiko, right? No copy because there's nothing that targets. Now as we come into turn 5, we've got 7 mana and a way to copy something again. My thought is Whirlwind of Thought. Now then, whatever we cast it on creature spell, we draw a card. And my thought is Seize the Spoils. Unfortunately, it's not going to get copied with Shiko, but we are going to draw a card from the Whirlwind of Thought. We're going to draw a card from Shiko. Then Seize the Spoils is, we'd have to pitch a card side that was already in our hand. We'll pick the Landscape. Now we draw 2 and make a treasure. We've just got a bunch of card draw, right? And now we're in good shape on this next turn. We have something like Narset. We got the Past in Flames to turn our graveyard online for spells. And I'm liking this. I mean, obviously, as soon as we can start copying the Twin Staffs, right, it's going to get a lot better. And as we come to our next turn, there's the Jayas, but we'd really love, right, for it to be a second spell if we're going to get big damage. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. If I Felwar for 2, I go down to 7, but I come back up to 8 because of the Felwar Stone. That would be a Jaya for 6, copied twice, right? So if I Jaya for 6, I get to draw off the Whirlwind of Thought. This copies. So I'm dealing 6, 12, 18, right, to 3 different targets, which are going to be my opponents, right? So there you go. 18 damage to each of my opponents. Shiko could still attack this turn and get in. And I think that's where the privilege of something like these X spells that target can be really good. Think about Crackle, right? If you were to go with something like X equals 3 off of Crackle, you're talking about 15 damage to 3 different opponents for 11 mana, right? Because it's triple X double red. Copied once is 30 damage for that mana. And you can start to see why Crackle Power can be, right, particularly good there. Let's get into another play test here. I think we've kind of, at that point, you take the attacks, and on the next turn we can, we could even Past in Flames it back if we can accumulate some more mana. There's a lot of other options how we do this. Take the turn to Windfall and play something like Narset, and then on the next turn, try to Flames it back. And there's so many ways we can look at, going from there. But let's get into playtest number 3. Keeping a 3-lander with that Aligned Heart, Reversal, Windfall, and Swords of Plowshare. So we got some good removal. We've got some good interaction. We just need to look for that 4th land to get to Shiko. And there's the Felwar Stone. So we got it. We got ourselves there. On turn 2, we're not doing anything anyway, right? So I think we play that Felwar Stone. Now we've got Shiko down on turn 3, which I think makes a ton of sense. This is really nice because if we hit a 1-mana spell, we could Aligned Heart plus do something else. So that was 3 mana. We have 2 mana left. This could be a world where we Swords to Plowshares on main to get a monk, get a copy of it, right, and take out 2 things. I don't know if that makes sense on turn 4. Or for 5 mana, we could Windfall, throw the island away and get a couple treasures, get a couple cards, and see if that gets us anywhere. And it does. I mean, we see the talisman. We could put a treasure into the talisman, right, just to have more mana next turn, right? And then now on this turn, we're talking 7 mana plus 1 is 8. So we can't like Aligned Heart plus that, but we could Aligned Heart plus Jeskai Charm if we wanted to put 2 creatures back on top of their owner's library. It's turn 5, and that might be something we could do. We could do a fun example of Sublime Epiphany in reversal to put the Epiphany back into our hand. And we still get the copy, we still get the Narset copy, and we would basically still have 2 copies of Sublime Epiphany. The only problem there is I just don't have a creature I'd want to make a copy of, but I think that's fine. I think drawing 2 and returning 2 non-land permanents and having it back in our hand could be worth it. But I think it's just Aligned Heart and maybe try to put 2 things back on top and get the Monk. I only like that because then, you know, the Epiphany has something to target. And we get to choose, just to bounce there, and then that gets that rally counter. And then we come back to our turn here. Now the Twinning Staff's great, right? 2, still 8 mana. Play the Twinning Staff, we're down to 5 mana. Which would give this prowess, right? I'm just trying to think. I guess we could Swords here on main, you know, to get the Twinning Staff to go up. Basically, get 3 copies of Swords to Plowshares for some big removal, right? Get another couple Monks. It's kind of awkward here. We would have loved to have had just a teeny bit more card draw, but I mean that could be fun. Lead us into the big Epiphany turn here next turn, and get 1, 2, 3 copies of it to make a bunch of Monks and all that. And I think you can kind of see really where that's going to lead. Let's just show it for the purposes of that. So here, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. My thought is cast, Oh, does that work the way I want it to? Cast this. Cast the reversal targeting it. This goes off, copying the reversal, but the reversal won't be able to, the reversal won't be able to, the copies of the reversals won't be able to see the Sublime Epiphany. Right, because only the original is going to see. Or would I be able to do this, cast this, the copy of this bounces the original reversal, the copy of that bounces the original reversal. So we have what, 2? I'm just trying to think of this here in my head. We have 2 copies of this on the stack. This one targets this. This one bounces this, is my thought. So this Narset's reversal targets the Sublime Epiphany and bounces it and copies it. And we would still get the Aligned Heart trigger for the Monks. Then this one bounces the initial reversal back to our hand, so we still have access to it. The copy would have technically a legal target, because when we put it on the stack, that's a good question. I don't know how that would exactly work. Maybe we'd need it to all of these top ones on the stack to target the Sublime Epiphany, and one might fizzle. But I think there's a world here where that interaction works. I'd have to kind of sit down and do that more on paper and figure that out. But I think what I'm kind of wanting out of that's there. But let me know, what do you think of Shiko and Narset down in the comment section below? Interesting deck. I think it's fun to get the flurry payoffs, and I think there's a lot of ways you can take the deck. I'd love to know what you're doing with your deck. And if you're interested, my $50 upgrade for this precon is up on the channel as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all.